On December 26, 1996, authorities in Colorado encountered a crime scene that contradicted basic forensic logic. The physical evidence presented two entirely different psychological signatures in the exact same physical space: highly calculated, methodical staging, existing right alongside impulsive, disorganized violence. The extent of the staging was exhaustive. Investigators found a 2.5-page document demanding ransom, drafted on paper taken directly from the home. Profilers estimate that carefully handwriting a document of that length, including a practice draft, required the author to sit inside the active crime scene for roughly 21 minutes. The victim at the center of this scene was JonBenét Ramsey, a 6-year-old child. The sheer brutality inflicted upon her body stands in stark, jarring contrast to her extreme youth and vulnerability. This creates the defining psychological question of the investigation. We have to ask what kind of mind possesses the terrifying composure to spend nearly a third of an hour composing a fictional kidnapping narrative while a murdered child lies in the basement just a few feet away. The demographic baseline of this crime is critical. The Ramsey family lived in an affluent, low-crime neighborhood in Boulder, Colorado, an environment completely unaccustomed to violent home invasions. John Ramsey was a highly successful corporate executive who had recently finalized the sale of his company. His wealth was substantial and specific, highlighted by a recent annual work bonus totaling exactly $118,000. Patricia, or Patsy Ramsey, had a background in beauty pageants, a world she had heavily integrated JonBenét into. This immersed the family in the practice of image management, the rigorous, ongoing effort to project a flawless, successful public facade to the outside world. These socioeconomic factors actively worked against the initial police response. Confronted with a wealthy, socially prominent family, local law enforcement deferred their authority. They failed to secure the house or isolate the parents, a breakdown in protocol site. To understand the spatial evidence, we mapped the chronological window. Between 10 p.m. and the 5:52 a.m. 911 call, unremembered decision points occurred. JonBenét consumed pineapple, and the sprawling ransom note was drafted. Neither parent reported memory of these events. The integrity of the scene completely collapsed at 1:05 p.m. the next day. Directed to search the house, John Ramsey opened a basement room and discovered his daughter's body, removed the duct tape from her mouth, and carried her upstairs to the living room. Moving the body obliterated the physical context of the crime. By carrying her through the house, the spatial logic was destroyed. Investigators were forced to abandon crime scene reconstruction and rely almost entirely on isolated trace evidence and behavioral profiling. The raw forensic data from the autopsy reveals a massive internal contradiction. JonBenét suffered an 8.5-inch linear fracture to the skull, alongside severe physical assault. In forensic psychology, this indicates expressive violence, a high-energy physical act driven by sudden rage or a panicked accident. Yet embedded in her neck was a garrote, intricately fashioned from nylon cord and the broken handle of one of Patsy Ramsey's paintbrushes. This mechanism indicates instrumental violence, a sadistic, goal-oriented tool requiring focus and deliberate mechanical effort to construct and apply. The ultimate artifact of the staging effort is the ransom note. Investigators confirmed it was written on a domestic legal pad. Linguistic analysis isolates two anomalies, demanding exactly $118,000, John Ramsey's exact corporate bonus, and using cinematic phrasing to claim representation by a small foreign faction. However, trace evidence found at the scene points in the opposite direction. A broken basement window offered a potential, if highly difficult, point of entry. More critically, unidentified male DNA was extracted from the victim's clothing. The physical evidence splits into two mutually exclusive realities. The note and the paintbrush garrote imply intimate financial knowledge and elaborate domestic staging. The basement window and the foreign male DNA point to a high-risk external intruder. Forensic psychologists evaluate two psychiatric archetypes. Profile A, the insider, points to emotional dysregulation and an accidental death, followed by extreme rationalization to protect the family. Profile B, the intruder, demands a sadistic predator with astronomical risk tolerance, willing to linger to draft paperwork. The insider's inner narrative is pure self-preservation. In this model, the murder wasn't the goal. The elaborate kidnapping narrative was manufactured after the fact to create a phantom villain, deflecting the investigation completely away from the household. The intruder's inner narrative centers on sexual control and the targeted humiliation of a wealthy family. In this model, the crime is a cinematic fantasy enacted in the real world, prioritizing the psychological torture of the parents alongside the assault. This creates the ultimate profiling deadlock. Both archetypes perfectly explain half of the crime scene evidence, but to accept either profile, you have to entirely dismiss the other half of the physical facts. Investigators heavily scrutinized the family's post-crime behavioral indicators. The parents provided shifting statements over time, and detectives noted that within hours of the body being discovered, John Ramsey attempted to arrange a private flight to relocate the family to Atlanta, establishing an immediate public defensive posture. In 1999, a grand jury evaluated the evidence. They voted to indict the parents, not for murder, but for child abuse resulting in death. This specific legal interpretation suggests the jury believed the parents were involved in the staging and endangerment, even if they didn't strike the fatal blow. The district attorney, however, refused to sign the indictment, citing a lack of evidence. The narrative shifted entirely in 2008. Advanced touch DNA technology successfully isolated a complete, unknown male genetic profile from the victim's clothing. Relying on this biological absolute, the district attorney's office officially cleared the Ramsey family of any involvement. The investigative irony is profound. The DNA breakthrough legally exonerated the family, but it created a psychological black hole. It confirmed the existence of a phantom intruder whose actions completely defy established behavioral logic. This leaves a core controversy that still divides experts. We must reconcile how an unknown, disorganized pedophile leaves foreign DNA at a crime scene, but utilizes the mother's domestic supplies to craft a hyper-specific financial demand. Making the pieces fit requires extreme rationalizations. Either a violent predator paused a murder to write a 3-page essay to buy time, or the genetic material is a trace transfer artifact, harmless DNA deposited on newly purchased clothing at a manufacturing factory, unrelated to the crime. Without a match in the national DNA database, the hard science and the behavioral profiling remain locked in a total stalemate. Every physical clue is undercut by the initial contamination of the primary scene on the morning of December 26th. The final psychological formulation is that this crime scene is a behavioral chimera. It reads as half-panicked domestic staging and half-sadistic external intrusion. When you strip away decades of tabloid noise, the pageants, and the media frenzy, you are left solely with the grim sequence of violence. A 6-year-old child suffered severe blunt force trauma and manual strangulation in the basement of her own home. The JonBenét Ramsey investigation serves as a grim masterclass in forensic psychology. It proves that when a crime scene is fatally compromised in the opening hours, it allows competing psychological realities to exist simultaneously, forever